Welcome back to the Autonomous Fine podcast.
It's great to be back for this one.
So I want you to imagine something for a second. You're sitting in your living room, right? And suddenly you smell smoke.
Oh boy.
Yeah. You walk into the kitchen and your curtains are just totally engulfed in flames. The fire is spreading fast. In that exact second, what do you do?
Right.
Do you, stand there and mourn the potential loss of your family photo albums? Do you pull out your phone to text your neighbor and complain about how unfair it is that your house, of all houses, is catching fire today?
Well,
Or do you stand there analyzing your feelings of betrayal toward the toaster that started it?
I mean, if you did any of those things, you would probably just burn to death.
Exactly. Which seems painfully obvious, when we use a literal burning house as the example.
Yeah, totally.
But as we transition from the theoretical groundwork we laid down in the previous chapter into the real-world application we're covering today in this deep dive, we are going to confront a really uncomfortable truth.
Very uncomfortable.
Because we're jumping into chapter 4 of Ben Sheargold's Continuous Master Manuscript today. And Sheargold makes this brutal observation.
He really does not hold back here.
No, he doesn't. He says that in almost every other type of crisis in our lives, like financial, relational, professional, we do exactly what I just described. We stand in the burning kitchen, and we process our feelings.
Yeah, and this chapter 4, which is titled The Binary Switch, it represents this huge pivotal turn in Ben Sheargold's entire philosophy.
It's kind of the core of it, really.
It is. Up until now, we've been building this architecture of an independent mind. We've looked at all the theory of cognitive control.
Right.
But this chapter is where the abstract philosophy is finally forced into a stress test.
Oh, absolutely.
Sheargold is taking aim at one of the most deeply ingrained, celebrated human instincts in our modern culture, which is our desire to emotionally process adversity the second it strikes.
And he doesn't just suggest that taking a moment to process our emotions is, slightly inefficient.
No.
He outright condemns it. He calls it a dangerous lag in our cognitive hardware.
Right. He's basically arguing that the way most of us have been taught to handle a sudden problem, to pause, to feel, to sit with the emotion, to call a support system, it's actively sabotaging our ability to survive the actual crisis.
Which is, it's a profoundly countercultural argument.
Oh, massively.
Because we live in an era that highly values and honestly even mandates emotional processing.
Yeah.
We're constantly told to honor our feelings, right?
Yeah, everyone says, feel your feelings. But Ben Sheargold draws this hard line here. And to understand why, we have to look really closely at what he calls the gray area.
Gray area, yes.
This is the psychological space most human beings just inhabit the moment a problem hits. It's that liminal space between encountering a sudden disruption and actually, attempting to fix it.
Okay, let's unpack this gray area a bit. Because when I first read chapter 4, I recognized my own behavior immediately.
Oh, I think everyone does.
Right, a crisis hits, maybe you lose a huge client at work, or a relationship suddenly just implodes without warning.
Yeah.
And the gray area is that span of time where you were just paralyzed by the shock of the event.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of moving to solve it, you start churning through an emotional checklist.
And if we look at what's happening biologically, right, and psychologically in that exact moment, it's a fascinating sequence of events.
What's going on in the brain there?
So when a sudden crisis occurs, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, it just fires off.
Right, the alarm bell.
Exactly. It floods your entire system with stress hormones. Now, if you think about it evolutionarily, early hominids didn't have to navigate complex supply chain failures, right?
No, or sudden PR disasters on social media.
Exactly. Their crises were usually physical predators, so that immediate freeze response, followed by a huge surge of emotion, was often a signal to the rest of the tribe.
Oh, wow. So it's basically a biological flare gun.
That's a perfect way to put it. We are biologically wired to broadcast our distress because, historically, rallying the tribe around us was literally our only chance of survival.
So wait, seeking external validation during a crisis isn't just a character flaw, it's ancient survival programming.
It is. We want to be understood. We want the group to validate our panic so that the group will, help us bear the load.
Right.
But Sheargold argues that while this hardware was great for surviving a saber-toothed tiger on the savannah, it is catastrophic for navigating the modern, hyper-complex world.
Because the saber-toothed tiger isn't there anymore.
Exactly. In a modern crisis, waiting for the tribe to validate your feelings before you take action, it just ensures that the problem grows exponentially worse while you're standing still.
And Sheargold uses really specific phrase for this emotional lingering. He doesn't view it as a beautiful, necessary facet of the human experience.
No, definitely not.
He calls it mental noise.
Which is incredibly clinical.
It's ruthless. But I was thinking about this because I want to make it practical for you listening right now. It's like, okay, think about driving your car down the highway.
Okay.
You're cruising along, and suddenly the check engine light comes on.
Always a stressful moment.
Right, the gray area that Sheargold is talking about. It's like staring at the light, panicking about the light, calling your best friend to complain about how unfair it is that your car is breaking down today.
Right, while you're still driving at 70 miles an hour.
Yes, you feel totally victimized by the light. But immediate execution, what Sheargold is demanding, is simply pulling over and reading the code.
That's a great analogy.
But I want to push back on Sheargold slightly here, for the sake of anyone listening who might be thinking this sounds, well, kind of sociopathic.
I hear that a lot with this chapter.
Is Sheargold saying we shouldn't feel things at all? Like, are we supposed to be robots? Because suppressing emotion usually leads to a massive psychological blowback later on.
Right. That is probably the most common pushback to high-performance stoicism in general. And Sheargold does address this nuance later in the text.
Okay, so he's not saying never feel anything again.
No, he is absolutely not advocating for the permanent eradication of human emotion. He isn't saying you shouldn't experience grief or joy or frustration.
Okay.
What he is doing is rearranging the sequence of operations. It is entirely about timing. He's identifying emotional processing as a critical inefficiency, specifically during the active phase of a crisis.
Oh, I see. It's a sequence issue, not an eradication issue.
Think back to your burning house. You don't sit in the burning kitchen analyzing your grief over the melting photo album.
Like die.
Exactly. You execute the exit strategy. You get your family out. You call the fire department. You can process the trauma of the fire tomorrow, next week, or, in therapy for the next 10 years.
Right, right.
But in the gray area, in that tiny gap between the spark and the execution allowing emotion into the system is a fatal liability.
That makes a lot of sense. The emotion is a luxury you can only afford once you are standing safely on the front lawn.
Yeah, exactly. And because that gray area is identified as the systemic flaw, Sheargold doesn't just tell us to avoid it.
Right, he actually gives us a replacement.
Yes. He provides the exact cognitive software to override it. He calls it the fierce binary blueprint.
Let's unpack that term, because fierce is a very deliberate choice of words.
It really is.
It implies a level of aggression, like active, forceful discipline. Overriding an illusionary freeze response is not a passive activity.
No, it's not going to happen naturally.
You don't just gently slide into execution mode while your amygdala is screaming at you. You have to violently flip a switch against your own biology.
The aggression is necessary because, like we said, you are fighting millions of years of mammalian programming.
Right.
And the second half of that term, binary, this is where Sheargold's technological vocabulary really takes over Chapter 4.
He leans into the computer metaphors heavily here.
Very heavily. In computer science, a binary system is composed entirely of ones and zeros. It is on or it is off. True or false. There is absolutely no middle ground.
There's no maybe. There's no, I'll try my best and see how I feel about it.
A condition either exists or it doesn't. You are either executing a solution or you are failing.
Wow. No in between.
None. Sheargold states that an autonomous mind must operate on this blueprint. When a crisis hits, that internal switch must flip instantly from problem identification directly to flawless execution.
And there's zero room for excuses. In fact, he calls excuses corrupted code.
Yes, and, the technological vocabulary throughout this whole manuscript is so persistent. Cognitive hardware, corrupted code, running your own code.
It can feel a bit cold at first, honestly.
It can, but the more you dive into it, the more you realize it's actually an incredibly clever psychological trick.
How so?
It is a mechanism for ego detachment.
Oh, interesting.
If we look at the broader picture of human behavior, our biggest obstacle to overcoming failure isn't usually a lack of intelligence, it's shame.
Wow. Yeah, that's true.
When we fail, or when a crisis exposes a weakness in us, we feel inadequate. Our ego gets bruised.
Right, we take it personally.
Exactly. And the immediate biological defense mechanism against a bruised ego is to generate an excuse. We say, well, it wasn't my fault, or the market conditions were impossible, or I just didn't have enough time.
But a computer doesn't do that.
A computer does not feel shame when a program crashes.
Huh, right.
It doesn't write a narrative about how unfair the user is being by running too many applications at once.
I'm doing my best. Please stop opening Chrome tabs.
Exactly. It simply logs an error. It identifies the corrupted code, and it awaits a patch.
That is so freeing, actually.
It is. By viewing the mind as an operating system, Ben Sheargold is handing you a tool to completely decouple your self-worth from your failures.
So if I mess up a massive presentation at work, I am not fundamentally a bad person, and I am not a failure as a human being.
No.
My execution script just had a bug in it that needs patching.
That's it. And that framework allows you to look at your mistakes with total objective clarity. Excuses are literally corrupted code that crashed the system.
Because it's false data.
Right. When you feed an excuse into your cognitive hardware, you are feeding the algorithm false data. An algorithm cannot output a correct solution if the input data is just a lie you told yourself to protect your feelings.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because it sounds phenomenal when you read it in a manuscript. Just be a machine. Flip the binary switch.
Right. Easier said than done.
Exactly. Because we aren't machines, our brain chemistry is incredibly messy. Sheargold demands that this switch must flip instantly.
Instantly, yes.
So how does a normal person actually train themselves to do this? How do you develop the sheer discipline required to view a massive sudden life upheaval as just a system alert?
Well, it requires a fundamental re-agitation of your neural pathways. And Sheargold suggests a methodology that actually closely mirrors exposure therapy.
Exposure therapy. Okay.
You cannot build the binary switch during a Category 5 hurricane if you haven't practiced it in a light rainstorm. You have to start with micro-crises.
Give me an example of a micro-crisis.
Okay. Spilling a massive cup of hot coffee all down your shirt, 5 minutes before you're supposed to lead a crucial meeting.
A total nightmare, but yeah, a low-stakes one in the grand scheme of things.
Right. So the old version of you, the one operating in the emotional gray area, might curse, slam the mug down, blame the barista for overfilling the cup.
Feel a massive rush of anxiety.
Yes, and let that frantic negative energy bleed directly into the boardroom.
You're just processing your frustration instead of solving the stain.
Exactly. So how does the binary blueprint handle the coffee spill?
The switch flips.
The new you, who is actively training this binary switch, recognizes the spill. The problem is identified. The switch flips instantly to execution.
Okay, so what does that look like?
You forcefully suppress the urge to curse or analyze why this always happens to you.
Right.
You grab a wet paper towel, you dab the stain, you put on a dark jacket to cover it, and you walk into the meeting. Zero emotional lag.
Just pure execution.
Now, it requires intense, conscious effort the first 50 times you do it. But over time, through the process of neuroplasticity, that instant pivot from identification to execution becomes your default neural pathway. You basically habituate to stress.
You build the binary muscle on the tiny inconveniences so that it actually has the tensile strength to lift the heavy weight when a real tragedy hits.
That's beautifully said. And a crucial part of building that muscle is knowing exactly what you were supposed to be executing on.
Because if you just flip the switch but don't know what to do, you're just panicking faster.
Right. If you flip the switch to execute but don't know where to direct your energy, you just end up spinning your wheels in a totally different kind of panic.
Which brings us perfectly to the most practical, functional tool Sheargold outlines in Chapter 4, the dichotomy of control.
The sorting mechanism.
Exactly. Once that binary switch is flipped to the on position, you need a sorting mechanism to process all the chaos in front of you.
So Sheargold boils the entire execution phase down to two absolute choices. Remember, this is a binary blueprint.
Ones and zeros.
Everything must be sorted into one of two buckets. He writes in the manuscript, and I quote, "You either accept the variables you cannot control, or you execute on the data you can."
Accept or execute.
That is the functional core of the entire system.
Yeah.
Every single aspect of a crisis, every detail, every person involved, every potential consequence must be immediately routed into one of those two pathways.
It's either a controllable data point or it's an uncontrollable variable.
That's it.
Okay, let's talk about the absolute precision required for this sorting process, specifically regarding that word accepting.
This is a huge point of confusion for people.
Because in our common vernacular, accepting something often carries a lot of passive-aggressive baggage.
Yeah, it does.
We think acceptance means, like, begrudgingly dealing with the situation while secretly resenting it. We say things like, fine, I accept that my flight is delayed, but I'm going to complain about the airline for the next 3 hours.
And Ben Sheargold would immediately flag that complaint as corrupted code.
Because it's useless data.
Because in his framework, accepting an uncontrollable variable means genuinely, fundamentally dropping it. It means literally deleting it from your active RAM.
Oh, wow.
If you cannot control a variable, devoting even a fraction of a percent of your processing power to resenting it, wishing it were different, or lamenting its existence, that is a direct violation of the binary blueprint.
Because it creates drag on the system. It's like leaving 20 browser tabs open in the background while you're trying to render a heavy 3D video.
Exactly. It drains your battery life on variables you have zero power to change. And on the flip side, executing on controllable data means taking action with absolute ruthless commitment. Once you have isolated the tiny sliver of data that you actually control, you don't debate it.
You don't ask for
You
permission.
just execute.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? I want to try to visualize this sorting mechanism in real time.
Let's do it.
Let's use the analogy of a pilot. Let's say you are a pilot flying a small single-engine aircraft.
Okay.
You are cruising along, and suddenly the weather forecast proves to be completely wrong, and you fly directly into a violent, unexpected storm system.
A classic high-stakes crisis.
Right. The turbulence is tossing the plane around like a toy. The rain is blinding the windshield, and the warning alarms are just screaming.
Terrify.
The natural gray area response is absolute panic. It's white-knuckling the yoke and yelling, "Why didn't air traffic control warn me? I hate flying in the rain. This isn't fair. I'm going to crash."
And that right there is the emotional lag. The pilot is analyzing their feelings of betrayal regarding the meteorologist instead of actually flying the airplane.
Now let's apply Sheargold's binary switch. The switch flips. The pilot looks at the terrifying situation and instantly runs the sorting algorithm.
Oh, sorted out.
The storm itself, the wind velocity, the blinding rain, the incompetence of the weather forecaster.
Uncontrollable variables.
Exactly. Complaining about the rain is corrupted code. You accept the storm entirely, you drop all resentment of the clouds.
Which leaves you with what?
So what is the controllable data?
Well, it's your altitude, your airspeed indicator, the physical yoke in your hands, your compass heading,
And
the communication radio.
that's it. You execute only on those instruments.
What's fascinating here is how this mirrors actual aviation survival.
Really? How so?
Yeah, in aviation, there is this phenomenon called the graveyard spiral.
Oh, that sounds awful.
It is. It happens when a pilot is flying in a storm with zero visibility. The fluid in their inner ear, their biological sensory system, it literally tricks their brain into feeling like the plane is flying straight and level.
Even when it's not.
Exactly. In reality, the plane is in a steep banking dive, but the biology is feeding them false data.
So if the pilot trusts their biological feelings, if they trust their own consensus of reality in that moment, they will just fly the plane directly into the ground.
They will. The only way to survive a graveyard spiral is to forcefully ignore what your body is feeling, stare directly at the artificial horizon gauge on the dashboard, and trust the instrument over your own emotions.
You execute on the data, and you ignore the biological panic.
That is a phenomenal parallel to Ben Sheargold's philosophy. The binary switch forces you to become deaf to the thunder and numb to the inner ear so you can just read the gauges.
What?
Crisis usually feels overwhelming because it presents itself as this massive, monolithic entity. It feels like one giant cloud of doom.
Yeah, it feels like everything is wrong everywhere all at once.
Right. But Sheargold argues that a crisis is never one big thing. It is a mosaic of 1,000 tiny data points.
And when you run that mosaic through the sorting algorithm, you realize something profound. You realize that 95% of those data points are completely uncontrollable.
Almost all of it.
The macroeconomic climate, the actions of your competitors, the weather, the decisions your ex-partner made, the past itself.
You drop the 95%?
Yes. And suddenly, the massive, overwhelming crisis shrinks down to a tiny 5% sliver of actionable data.
It is immensely clarifying. It shrinks the universe down to the exact size of your own agency.
Yes.
And it is a profound relief to realize that you only ever have to worry about the things your hands are currently touching.
You only ever have to worry about the things your hands are currently touching.
Right.
If you internalize that, It just completely eliminates anxiety. Because anxiety is almost always rooted in trying to mentally manipulate variables you can't physically touch.
Exactly. But Sheargold is very aware that maintaining this hyper-focused binary precision is incredibly difficult in practice.
Because life isn't lived in a vacuum.
Right. We don't face crises in isolation. We live in a world surrounded by other people who are almost all operating in that emotional gray area.
Going back to the aviation analogy, it's one thing to fly the plane on instruments when you're alone in the cockpit.
Sure.
It's an entirely different challenge when you have 4 passengers in the back seat screaming at you that you're going to get them all killed.
Which is why Sheargold introduces a final layer of defense in Chapter 4.
The final piece of the puzzle.
Yes. To protect the binary switch from being overridden by external panic, you have to establish an impermeable perimeter around your cognitive hardware.
Okay, so we're transitioning from the internal mechanics to external boundaries.
Exactly. We have to look at how the autonomous mind interacts with the chaos of the outside world.
And Sheargold calls this perimeter the high Stoic Framework.
The high Stoic Framework.
He states that to truly maintain an uncompromised state during a crisis, you have to stop operating on the consensus of a chaotic world.
Right.
And you have to begin running your own code. He argues that eradicating your need for outside approval is the absolute prerequisite for seizing control of your coordinates.
This is where his philosophy scales from a personal survival tactic to a broader behavioral architecture.
Yeah.
Let's look closely at the term he uses, high Stoic. We all have a pop culture understanding of Stoicism.
Yeah, we picture like Marcus Aurelius in a military tent or just someone gritting their teeth.
Exactly. Modern culture often views Stoicism as mere emotional suppression, just taking the beating that life gives you with a stiff upper lip.
But Sheargold uses the modifier high Stoic. What elevates it?
It is elevated from a passive endurance strategy into an active, aggressive system of self-governance.
Okay.
A traditional, watered-down Stoic might look at the storm and say, I will endure this rain without letting it upset me.
Right, very noble.
But a high Stoic, operating on Ben Sheargold's binary blueprint, says, I will not let the rain upset me because I am too busy aggressively executing on my heading and altitude to even notice if I am wet.
Oh, wow. It is weaponized Stoicism.
It's not about enduring the world, it is about executing your way through it.
And the primary target of this weaponized Stoicism is the crowd, right? What Sheargold calls the consensus.
The consensus of a chaotic world, yes.
Think about the nature of a consensus. It is the general agreement of the majority. But Sheargold accurately points out a fundamental law of mass psychology. The world is inherently chaotic.
Very true.
Therefore, when a sudden crisis hits, a chaotic world will naturally produce a panicked, chaotic consensus.
You see this constantly. Think about a sudden stock market correction.
Oh, the panic is instant.
The consensus of the crowd is absolute panic. They're screaming, sell everything, hoard cash, the financial system is collapsing.
Or think about a public relations crisis for a brand. The consensus on social media is immediate outrage, hysteria, and a demand for total condemnation.
Because the crowd is almost always operating in the gray area.
Right.
The consensus is analyzing its feelings, screaming for external validation, and generating massive amounts of mental noise. The crowd is basically just a giant collective thermal throttling mechanism.
That is a great way to put it.
And if you, as an individual trying to navigate your own crisis, look to the crowd for validation, if you pause to check how everyone else is reacting before you decide what to do,
You are actively downloading their corrupted code into your own hardware.
you are willfully infecting your own operating system with a virus of panic. The moment you care about whether the crowd agrees with your execution, you compromise your binary switch.
You introduce a variable that you cannot control their opinion.
Yes, which immediately crashes the system.
Okay, I have to jump in here and aggressively challenge this.
Go for it.
Because this concept of ignoring the consensus, it can be incredibly dangerous if misinterpreted. Are we isolating ourselves too much here? Is there a danger in completely ignoring the consensus?
It's a fair question.
Let's say I am the CEO of a company and we release a new product. Immediately, the consensus of our user base is outrage. They're screaming that the product is defective, toxic, and ruining their workflow.
Okay, a real PR crisis.
Right. If I apply Sheargold's high Stoic framework poorly, I could say the crowd is panicked, their outrage is just corrupted code. I am running my own code, and I believe the product is great, so I'm going to ignore them.
Right, you just block them out.
But that isn't Stoicism. That is delusional arrogance, and it will run the company into the ground. What if the consensus is warning us about a real cliff?
That is the critical edge case, and it's a brilliant challenge. It requires us to thread the needle of Sheargold's exact phrasing.
Okay, how does he handle that?
Initializing the high Stoic framework is never about ignoring reality or rejecting factual data. You have to run the crowd's reaction through the dichotomy of control we discussed earlier.
So you just sort the data from the noise.
Precisely. Let's use your CEO example. The crowd is screaming online. You run it through the binary switch. What is the signal and what is the noise?
The signal would be the facts.
Yes. The factual data is that the product has a defect that is breaking user workflows. That is controllable data. You accept that reality, and you execute on fixing the product immediately.
Okay, and the noise.
The noise is the crowd's emotional outrage. Their insults, their demands for you to be fired, their panic. That is an uncontrollable variable.
So you don't ignore the crowd entirely.
No, you strip mine the crowd for actionable data, and then you discard their drama.
Strip mine the crowd. I like that.
What Sheargold is warning against is letting the crowd's emotional reaction to reality dictate your actions. You don't fix the product to appease the crowd's anger. You fix the product because the product is broken.
Oh, that is a massive distinction.
Running your own code means trusting your own binary sorting system over the hysteria of the masses. You can extract information from the world, but you absolutely cannot derive your emotional cues or your sense of validation from the world.
You decouple the data from the drama, you take the telemetry, but you leave the panic.
That is the essence of it. And this brings us to the culmination of Chapter 4 and the final powerful metaphor Sheargold uses.
Let's hear it.
He says, the moment you eradicate the need for outside approval is the moment you seize absolute control of your coordinates.
Seize absolute control of your coordinates. It brings us right back to navigation, right back to the pilot in the storm.
Exactly.
If you are flying your plane and you're constantly looking out the window at the other aircraft, wondering if they think you're flying well,
Wondering if they approve of your altitude?
worrying if they judge your heading, you aren't flying your own plane anymore. You have surrendered your coordinates to their opinions.
And in a crisis, surrendering your coordinates is fatal. Sheargold's entire argument in Chapter 4 builds to this specific type of profound, almost severe self-reliance.
It really is severe.
The autonomous mind does not ask for permission to survive. It doesn't look around for a consensus to validate its escape route.
It doesn't ask for applause for executing correctly.
It simply identifies the problem, flips the switch, drops the uncontrollable variables, and executes on the actionable data completely insulated from the noise of the world.
It is a stark, almost solitary way to live.
Yeah.
When you really break it down, it requires you to stand apart from the normal flow of human interaction during moments of high stress.
It does.
But, you can see the undeniable raw power in it.
It is the difference between being a victim of circumstance, tossed around by the storm, and being the active architect of your own outcome. It is a cognitive fortress.
So let's zoom out and synthesize this incredible journey we've just taken through Chapter 4 of Ben Sheargold's manuscript.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by diagnosing a fatal flaw in our default programming, the danger of the emotional gray area.
Right.
We examined how that natural evolutionary lag where we seek comfort, where our mental CPU thermal throttles to protect our ego, can trap us in a burning building.
And we learned that the only way to survive that natural instinct is to actively overwrite it with the binary blueprint. We have to train an instant, fierce cognitive switch that moves us from problem identification directly to execution, viewing our own excuses as corrupted code.
We then explored the engine of that execution, the dichotomy of control, the absolute necessity of running a sorting algorithm on the chaos,
Dropping the resentment of the storm entirely.
shrinking our universe down to only the things our hands can touch, and executing on the instruments.
And finally, we learned how to secure those coordinates by initializing the high Stoic framework, learning to extract the actionable data from the world while violently rejecting the panic consensus and the drama of the crowd.
It is a comprehensive mechanical system for real-time resilience.
Absolutely.
It is definitely not easy, and it flies in the face of much of our modern social conditioning. But as Ben Sheargold lays it out, it appears to be the most reliable way to maintain an uncompromised mind when the world falls apart.
I couldn't agree more.
And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought. I want you to take the intense framework we've debated today and force it into your own reality right this second.
Put it to the test.
Think about the biggest, most chaotic problem in your life right now. The thing that is keeping you up at night. The crisis you are currently navigating, whether it's at work, in your relationships, or in your own head.
We all have one.
If you were to initialize Sheargold's binary switch today, right now, what is the very first piece of corrupted code you would find?
Hmm.
What excuse, what lingering resentment against an uncontrollable variable, what desperate plea for outside validation would you have to forcefully delete from your system to finally start executing your way out of the storm?
That's the real question.
Think about it. Find that corrupted code and delete it. Thank you for listening today, and don't forget to join us again next week for the next chapter of The Autonomous Mind.